И снова всем привет! Час спустя с вами София Ска, актер Сток, и сейчас к нам в гости присоединится Люка Перос. Люка Перос — это очень известный европейский актер, снявшийся в таких картинах, как я даже зачитаю, в каких картинах он снялся, чтобы «Бумажный домик», «Испанская принцесса», «Кровавое дерево», «Фотограф из Маутхаузена», Меган Ливи и во многих-многих других. Посмотрите его обязательно профайл в IMDb. Люка очень удивительный актер. Он побывал и пожил в очень многих странах, совершенно разных. Мне было бы очень интересно узнать у него, в связи с чем были его переезды, как прошла пандемия, какие новшества в Европе сейчас введены в связи с ситуацией, которая произошла. Я вижу, что Люка уже с нами. Я его присоединяю.
Hello.
Hi, Luka.
How are you doing? You're in Barcelona, right?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Hi, Moscow. Hi, Sofia.
Yes.
Hi, Russia. Hi, Europe. Whoever is along
And
with us.
everyone is gonna watch our live today. So, tell me, Luka, how's it going for you? How's the pandemic situation changed your life?
Changed my life. Well, I mean, for sure, a lot. It changed for the better in the sense of we had great family, intimate time, which I don't know if people, with all the troubles that everybody was kind of put into, no work or maybe work, whatever, I hope that people cherish the time spent with their family. I got to know my kids and my wife even better like this because, you know, you're caved in. You're constantly together. So I hope people appreciated and took advantage of that time. You know, workaholic dads or moms or whatever. You know,
and
so
that's right, for men especially. You're working all the time, and probably there was never such a long time together.
I'm often at home. Of course, you know, when I work, but it's not I don't have a 9 to 5 job, as you know, and all people listening in, if you're also thespians, actors, you know, it's ups and downs. But a real, you know, family with a mom and dad working 9 to 5 or having 2 jobs at once, you know, now suddenly at home, I hope that they kind of appreciated that family time. As hard as it was, and it still is, of course.
So what do you miss the most being at home? Like, what would be the first place or party or friends who you want to see after it's all going to be over and back to shape?
Well, talking about shape, I'm looking forward tomorrow. I'm finally going to go and play some football with my friends.
Great.
So I miss that a lot. I don't play that often, especially when I'm shooting. I don't play because I don't want to injure myself. I miss, you know, little things, really little things. And I do miss my family in Croatia, my parents and my brother and his family and some friends. But, you know, we do have these apps and we can communicate like that. So
you moved so many countries. You lived in different places. Can you tell me a little bit about that and how your career as an actor started?
Okay. I moved around, yes, a lot. My father is now retired, but he was a petrochemical engineer. And so he worked for first the Yugoslavian, because it was still Yugoslavia at that time in the 70s, 80s, for a company there. And then he moved to an American company. That's why we ended up in Vienna, then back in Zagreb. That's why when the war broke out in the Yugoslavian area, ex-Yugoslavia area, then he didn't really have a proper job to do to represent that company there. So we moved to Abu Dhabi in '92. And then I went to an American high school there. So with the war still kind of lingering in the Yugoslav Republic, well, new countries and all of that, and me being 17, 18, my parents said, like, all right, why don't you try to study in the States? I was like, all right. And they asked, what do you want to study? And I said, acting. And they were like, oh. They wanted to support me to have the university degree, whatever it was.
Why did you choose acting? And was it hard for you to move so many places? I know for a kid, it's not that easy to be always new in the
No,
group
it's
of
not.
people.
I agree. It wasn't, of course, but I think it helped me. It helped me learn by analyzing people, even if I wouldn't understand them, because everywhere I moved, I had to like learn the language, and I started to read and write in German as a kid, and then moving back to Croatia. Aha, Croatian, the nouns are not with a capital letter like in German. Aha, okay. It has how many letters more in the alphabet? Oh, five, six. Oh my God.
Oh
Okay.
gosh.
So, it was adapting, adapting, adapting. And I always enjoyed school plays, concerts, whatever it was, participating in that, singing in the choir. So I kind of was a fan of performance and a big TV and film buff. Watched an insane amount of TV in
Did you
the
try
80s.
to mock actors when you watched movies?
Of course,
Being a
of
kid,
course.
yes, you did
Yeah,
that.
yeah, of course. But the best part, I had VHS tapes. Like all you kids, those were like big tapes that you would put into a big machine and then watch a movie. Nothing like you have on your phones right now that you can watch whatever you want. So it was very hard to reach and find some movies. So I had a collection of movies that I liked that I taped, but they were all in German, dubbed in German. So for many years, I didn't even know the real voice of Jerry Lewis or or such idols. I
Right.
loved Jerry Lewis as a kid, so that's one of my influences. A lot of comedy actors, the Marx Brothers, and I made any kind of TV series. I was, David Hasselhoff in Knight Rider with Kit the car, and that was sci-fi. That was amazing. Not sci-fi per se as a genre, but it was amazing. This car. So it was exciting times in the 80s. Right now, when you flip through set channels, everything is over the top, so it kind of lost its flair. You rarely find something really interesting lately, but
So does it
it's
mean
normal.
that you're kind of born with that uh, specific analysis that all the actors has, that interest in the other people, their reactions, and that comes from you being born. It's not something that you especially trained, right? So you're
Yeah, I
good with
agree with
that.
you. I agree with you. Yes, there is this fine line of having something initially in your bloodline, in your genetics that you're born with. I agree with you. That you analyze, you study people. I sometimes, and I still do, at the age 43, I sit somewhere and I love to watch people. I'm on a bench and I watch the old couple on the other bench, these kids passing by. Do I make stories about them? No, but I kind of try to, this probably had this kind of profession early in his life. I don't know. I make up this
I
story
did
and
I did
and
the
and not
same, yeah.
understanding languages. It was also the intonation. You feel the intonation or whatever you don't understand. So is it good? Is it bad? It's just a lot. It taught me to be more aware of stuff and to really apply it then later and use it in my job.
So as we say, natural. You're a natural what you're doing. And when did
I
you
guess so.
when did you started to study acting professionally, and what school was it? And what did
Yeah.
you bring out of it the most?
Okay. I never had an acting class before university. So all of it was amateur doodling, either, like I said, in school or in 91 during the war. We had this group of people, they got together, we made a play then. I did workshops here and there, but nothing concrete. And so my first interaction, my first acting class was at Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts. And the whole acting program was at that time being guided by Kristen Linklater from Scotland,
Mhm.
who for 10 or 12 years at Emerson College was the dean of theater and created her method there and taught so many teachers in Massachusetts as well. And so all her pupils were art teachers as well. But I had the chance to do the last semester that she was there in our school. Um, I had the luck of studying under her, and it was amazing. So we used the Kristen Linklater method as the basis of everything else, of voice, freeing the natural voice was her ideology. She passed away, unfortunately, 3 weeks ago. It broke my heart. I'm still sad as one can be, because that woman was she was precious. She was amazing, and so many people now saying goodbye to her, from Sir Patrick Stewart to all great actors. Everybody worked with her. Everybody in the industry knows her, and she was really magnificent. So that was my first interaction.
So how can you give me a little bit of the explanation to bring yourself out of your voice? Like, what does it mean? Can you tell us a little bit?
There's one thing that she always kind of talked about. When you look at my phone is slipping. I'm falling out of frame. When you look at children, they're inhibited energy. They're full of it. They're always honest, and they go on impulse. And then with age, we start losing our let's say from the soul or from the heart, reacting and breathing and feeling. We all do that, and slowly as adults we all bring it up here, and it comes and it gets stuck in here, in this noggin, in this cerebrum of ours.
Stereotypes.
And we're taught, no, we get taught that this is the most important, whatever profession, whatever we do. And we forget about breathing, we forget about our voice, we forget about the rest that was initially here. So in one way, her idea was to connect our emotions with our body and our breath. You can be in whatever stress and whatever difficult position, even if you're doing yoga, but you want to do a recitation of any kind of text. If you're in a weird position, you might clog up in your throat, or you might not breathe properly. With her, it was fluid. She could, I don't know, be hanging off a chandelier, and she could still talk. And it was really putting air into your whole body, of really letting it out, of that it comes out, that gravity takes over our breath, that we don't even have to think about it, that it becomes absolutely normal to have our voice, and that when you have your voice, your emotion is there with the oxygen. I'm getting goosebumps because I'm thinking of her. Your voice is coming out in the last row of a huge audience, I mean a hall or a theater. Everybody can hear you whisper because you're on your voice. Yeah. And that was just this amazing experience, watching her mold us young students we didn't know what the hell was going on. But with age, then you come to this maturity, and you use her exercises, and the difference is drastic, really. Really.
Very interesting. Luka, tell me, did you work in a theater? Did you use the same technique in the theater? And where do you prefer to work better for yourself? Is it movies or theater? And what's the difference for you personally?
I worked in the theater a lot. I was so I did college productions in Boston. And then I moved to Croatia back in 2002 from the States, and slowly tried to get some gigs, and I ended up at the Croatian National Theater in Rijeka, which is the third largest city of Croatia on the northern coast. Mm-hmm. And I was there 2.5 years. I did 6-7 plays there in those 2 years, and I tried to apply all of these exercises, but unfortunately I have to say that discipline that was inbred in us, that was taught, embedded to us by Kristin and her pupil and our other teachers, let's say, that has nothing to do in Croatia. They're like, it was, the younger generations now are more aware of new methods, etc. But in Croatia, back in the late 90s or 2000s, still, like, you come and, let's warm up, guys. I'm like, what? I'm going to be down in the bar, have a beer and so on, and I'm going to come up and say my lines, and that's it. So unfortunately, that was kind of, for a lot of professional actors in the theater, that kind of method of work, which unfortunately engulfed me at one point as well, of not caring. And then I moved to the Zagreb Puppet Theater. I did 9 years, over like 1,600 shows, various titles.
Wow.
And I really, when you ask me, or cinema or TV, it's theater, without a doubt. But I got so fed up in these 9 years at the Puppet Theater that I needed a break. And now it's been 5 years that I haven't stepped on stage. I've been doing only TV and film. And I miss it, I do confess. I would like to do it, but my Spanish I don't think is good enough yet. My diction is not good enough to really do it in Madrid. The theater in Madrid is exceptional. It's really good. In Barcelona, it's a little bit on the lower side because it's more about the Catalan language and their own productions. It's a little bit more basic, so there's not
What
that many
what
open
made you
doors.
move to Barcelona? And my question before was, how can you leave Los Angeles, being an actor,
How can
and
you?
you lived in LA and then you moved to
I did
Barcelona?
everything else but act in LA. All right, I
Ah,
was a
how
restaurant
come?
manager. I was a production driver, a casting assistant, production assistant, gopher, armsman, props guy. I don't know what kind of jobs I didn't do there, and I didn't act. So after 2 years, I was like, all right, I can spend my life being one of those little links in the chain of everybody, 15 million people there wanting to have a career, or I can go and act in Uzbekistan, in Tuva, in Somalia, or wherever I want, because that's what I was taught to do. And I
But
wanted to
Luca,
do that.
how did that
And I
happen
hate
that
LA. I hate LA. It's the most
I
disgusting city in
understand
the
that,
world.
I
I'm sorry.
understand that.
I
Well,
can go there, I can work, I can kiss my friends, and bye bye.
I
I don't
lived
like that
there for
city.
9 years. I understand exactly what you're saying, and I kind of agree. But like, but still, how is it possible that you didn't act in LA? Like, what physically
Um,
didn't happen right way?
uh, I was, First of all, I was theatrically trained, so my auditions were always kind of not really. I had one semester acting in front of camera out of eight at Emerson College. So my work in front of the camera was always over the top because I was in there with my whole body and so on. That's not what they're looking for. Plus, another thing is that I was on a stupid verge of age range. I looked more mature, but I was too young. I was 23, 24 when I was there. And I think I was too mature to play the younger roles and not old enough to play the older roles. And it's just, right now when I think how, people can do their self-tapes and send it online, etc. I did everything by mail, my headshots, that cost money. And then sending it by mail to 60 agencies and two reply, because my last name is Peros actually, but the Perros with two R's is dogs in Spanish. So I got called in by two Latino talent agency that
Sorry that
thought I
I
spoke.
said your last name
No, no, it doesn't matter.
differently.
No, people, I started saying my last name wrong lately as well. Okay, I got used to it. No, but I got called in by Latino agencies, talent agencies in LA, thinking that I could speak Spanish, and I didn't know a licking word of Spanish back then. I didn't study Spanish. Learned Spanish in the last 5, 6 years living here. And I came here. You asked me Barcelona for love. I
Love, how
met a
great.
girl on the Croatian coast, and then we're like, hi, hi.
Do you like to live in Barcelona?
I
Would you
love it.
want to leave this place for something else, or this is the
No,
stop for you?
no, Barcelona it has everything that I want. It has the beach on the side, although I'm not a beach goer. I hate lying in the sand like a whale that Greenpeace needs to push back in. Uh, I'm not like that, but you have the sea, you have the mountains, and the city is big, cosmopolitan, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, everything, but not too big. It is like a mix of a Croatian city called Split and New York for me, in my opinion. And it's both crazy towns, and this one is just perfect. And you're close to Europe. Even from Madrid, it takes you 1 hour longer to get to Frankfurt, London, Paris, Milano, Rome, whatever you want to go for work. So I think this base here, it's ideal. And
Yeah.
you have everything: food, music, art. It's amazing.
I'm becoming to be jealous right now. You said such
Oh,
a
come
great
on.
stuff. There's a food, there's ocean, there's a sun, there's cathedral. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
what am I
there's lots
doing
of
here?
There's lots of nice stuff. I love walking around the city, all the ironwork on the balconies, and it's just
It
it.
is
All the
very old and
post Art
beautiful.
Deco before. It's just a beautiful city. And breathes nicely. And it was very nice. So without anybody on the streets the last couple of months, it was amazing. And now
Uh,
without tourists, it's also very fun. But I know that people need tourists to survive here. So there's rough
right.
times. Rough times.
Luca, before you said that now it's possible to do self-tapes, and so everything is much easier right now in the industry.
Yeah.
Is there anything, is there any other new stuff that we need to know about, like in Europe, for example, new rules? Have you
Well,
been on set since actually uh, the
Since the COVID?
pandemic. Yes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, new stuff. Yes, of course, self-tapes have been actual the last, 10, 12, 15 years with the internet, etc. There's, for all the actors out there in Europe, you have several websites that each country has something interesting. In Germany, there's a couple of websites you can look up. But everybody, should be aware that Spotlight in England is pretty much the database you need to be on, with or without an agent. Of course, better with an agent. So Spotlight is definitely something that, based on your, the little boxes that you click, what languages that you know, what you can play, age range, all of that, when you put that in the database, the casting directors send that out to a lot of slides over there and projects, and then your agent can kind of push you there. That's good. If you don't have an agent, a good platform to look for jobs is also eTalenta, a-talenta.com, I think, or e.com.
Let me write it down.
That's a-talenta.com. So that's a good website to have. You can pay, so you can have more stuff on it, more photos, more video books, show reels, I mean. So those are good things in that way.
Oh.
And regarding work, a month ago, our mutual friend Lucy Lennox, she said hi. I was at her office today. I've been preparing something with her. I cannot talk much more, but it's going to be very fun and interesting. You will be informed, and all of our audience members as well.
Great.
Lucy asked me to do this advertising for the Association of Producers of Commercials of Catalonia in Spain, because a lot of commercials are being shot in Barcelona and the area. The last 10 years, an insane amount of commercials, because there's good film crews here, good equipment, and like I said before, you have the beach, you have the mountains, you have the lake, you have old buildings, churches, whatever you want. So it was a good market. So we did a video of showing how shootings of a commercial should go right now, and I was in there as kind of the guest player. So I've done that 4 weeks ago. It was very weird to go to work, to be picked up by a car, to go through an ozone tunnel, which is like purifies the air and then sprays you as if you're like a tomato that needs, I don't know, to grow, and measured the temperature twice. Everything. It was weird because the people want to do the same way they're working on. Is it the focus puller, the camera guy, the sound guy? But everybody's kind of with a step back. Everybody was working with a handbrake on. It was an odd experience. And last week I went to Madrid to finish a movie for the Venice Film Festival that I was supposed to shoot exactly the weekend when the country was shut down in March. So I went to Madrid. Traveling was also kind of weird in the train.
Yes. How about the traveling?
Usually you have like 28, 25 trains a day between Barcelona and Madrid. Right now there's 2 or 3. And of course, they're all packed. Everybody was wearing masks, but it was packed. So it's kind of this, you want to respect your distance, somebody else's distance. But, if you really wash your hands, if you have the alcohol hand sanitizer, if you wear a mask, you should be pretty well off. But it's not normal. You don't feel normal. It's so odd. It's so odd.
You cannot feel normal in that. How soon do you think it's going to be over? I know it's
a year and a half.
It's an odd question. Everyone has that.
Sure.
A year and a half, you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, a year and a half in the health aspect of actual vaccine, spread of the vaccine, its effects. So not everybody's going to react equally to the vaccine, whatever they think of. So health-wise, we're talking about a year and a half, hopefully only. And economically, the world is going to be recuperating from this for 3 to 4 years, for sure.
Got it.
We're not, everybody now pushed in, I don't want to get philosophical, but everybody pushed in fake money to help the economies in the States, in Europe, etc. Somebody has to give that money back at one point. And you cannot invent more money all the time because the world stopped. So it's going to be rough. I'm sorry, guys. Bite down hard.
True. That's true.
It's rough.
Do you do anything else except acting in your life? Like, and kids and your wife, of course. course, but like, is
Yeah,
there something else
I'm
you...
an annoying father. I'm an annoying father. I molest my kids. I torture them, and they torture
Really?
me back. Yeah.
Would you like for your kids to be an actors one day? Do you think of them to have your career?
I want them to be healthy and to do what they love. Now, if that's acting, okay. Um, it's really not an easy job, guys. We all know that. Only few really get the chance to participate in really big projects, but there's also amazing actors out there that nobody ever heard of, but they're fine and happy with what they're doing where they're doing it. So I don't know. It's a hard job. It's a hard existential job, but I cannot imagine myself doing something else. I mean, there are passions I have. I love to cook. I love to drive, although I don't have a car.
You
I don't want to have a
also
car.
do a voiceover and you're doing it
Yes.
super great. Can you tell us about that experience and what's the difference with sound effect and real acting?
Well, sound effects are sound effects. Now, you have some crazy guys who can do really weird sounds. I can do something weird with my voice. But I've unfortunately I didn't have the chance to create a voice for something original. So that they drew something and then I always did voiceover of somebody else, be it in English or even Japanese or whatever language, and then I would do it into Croatian. And it's kind of my favorite part of my job, of all the possible TV, movie, theater, because it's me, it's the translation, usually pretty badly done, so I have to rewrite the translations for the logic with the scene, etc. A screen and a good sound guy behind the glass window. And then they let me loose, and in there 1 hour, 2 hours, depends on the role, and I have fun and I
And
giggle
it
all the
is
time.
so much fun. I
It
love
is
that
super
job
fun.
too. Yes.
It is super fun because they would either give me like monstrous animals, evil guys, or really the dumb guys that you're really, I don't know, dumb as a rock, like Patrick, the star from SpongeBob SquarePants. He is so dumb. Just when I think of his face, I start laughing because he's so funny. But you know, weird guys, bad guys, um crazy guys like I don't know if you remember Cow and Chicken on Cartoon Network. So the red guy, the hello, it's me, Lance Sackles, Super Cow. I don't know, Cookie Monster from Sesame Street. That I could do only 40 minutes.
Because talking like this all the time makes you don't know.
Oh yeah, yeah, that hurts.
So that's and
So,
singing like that, I was more Tom Waits than anything else. So, but
but
I love that job.
it's
I love it.
very cool job. I love that. And out of your movies where you actually acted in, out of all you've done, is there a favorite role that you felt like you really nailed it? Uh, can you remember your favorite role that you've done, and how did you prepare it for that role?
My favorite role was, of course, because of the challenge of such a big production. It was like almost a $30 million production. Was the remake of Papillon by Michael Noer with Charlie Hunnam and from Sons of Anarchy and Rami Malek, who played Freddie Mercury, in Bohemian Rhapsody. It was a challenge because it was such a big project. I spent 1 month in Montenegro shooting and then 1 more week in Belgrade shooting as well in 2016. I prepared profusely for 2 months, reading everything, not only Henri Charrier's book Papillon, but other books. René Belbenoit, The Dry Guillotine, La Guillotine Sec, is preceded the Papillon book by some 11, 12 years, and it's the identical story, but even more vividly described in the book. I also get goosebumps when I think about it. I was reading it in the gym because I lost 15 kilos for that role. I was 93 kilos for that role because
Oh
it was
wow.
1940s French Guyane. There's no food, there's no health system. I was a guard, and I was thin like this and bony, and it was interesting because it was up to 1,000 people on sets, 600 extras, just insane. It was really impressive. And I remember everybody remembered me because I was the guy screaming at all of them all the time.
Why
And all
were
the
you?
prisoners, all the prisoners in the role, like, Root Zero, move out! Stuff like that, you know, so they
So
remembered
it
me for
took you
that.
months to prepare, to
Yeah,
lose weight, to
yeah.
understand the history of the moment and also your own role. Did you guys rehearsed anything? Was there a table
Um,
read? Or you just on set they picked you and then you have to meet your partners and
Unfortunately,
everything?
we didn't have table reads. Of course, the director and the two principal players, lead actors, had many meetings, etc., and rehearsals. For me, I had two meetings with a dialect coach from LA. She we went with, let's find the standard American accent that we're supposed to all kind of act, but then later in the movie you have Irish accent and British, like, Chelsea neighborhood accent. It's just a mishmash of different English, Dutch English also by the warden from Jorik. So it was a mishmash. I had rehearsals with her, but after really two meetings, she was like, "Fine,
You're
you're
fine.
fine. You don't need anything." So that
Hey, you're
was it.
lucky you
We had
speak so many languages. That's why probably it's easy for you to pick up an accent.
Yeah, no, I have a good ear, and like we said earlier tonight, I moved about, so I had to adapt. And the better you speak a language, wherever you are, you get more integrated. I never, a lot of people leave their own country, go live somewhere else, work, study, whatever not, and they hang out with the people from their own country all the time. For me, that never made sense. It's like
Same
you
thing.
live,
When I moved to
you live on
LA,
the other side of, yeah.
I
Do
never
you hang
met
out with
any Russian
Russians all the
person.
time? Yep.
No, I didn't meet not even one person.
I met a couple of Croatians, but I hung out with one Croatian, and the rest were Serbians, and we played football, and
Yes,
all in the film industry, and that was
because you
it.
want to
And the
know
rest, I was with
the other.
Americans. Yeah, yeah. No, you learn, but you have people who are living like there for 30 years in Australia or in Canada or Chile, and they're watching Croatian news on the telly every night, drinking Croatian wine, and talking about the old times in the old country. Jesus Christ.
Right, all the
Then
time,
move
same
back,
thing.
and I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. I don't live
Yeah,
by such principles.
I
Our actors, we need to know everything about everything in the long run,
and learn all the time. So
and learn all
do
the
you
time.
train yourself? Do you go to any studios? Do you pick up new materials in between of your projects, or not anymore?
Not anymore. I've done a workshop 3 years ago in Lucy's studio in Barcelona with Mel Churcher. She came and like scene analysis preparation for auditions, but I met her actually in Croatia at the Academy of Dramatic Arts in 1997. She came. She was doing something like a method of warm up from Cicely Berry, who was the president of the Royal Shakespeare Company, and that Cicely Berry and my mentor Kristen Linklater had very similar um, programs or methods, and that's why I went to see this workshop at Lucy's office. But I read, I like to watch still TV and movies and some roles and how somebody in a TV series continues to pick up a role, or if it's biographical, even better. I don't know. Right now, one of the best performances I've seen in the last 1 year, in my opinion, is Russell Crowe as Roger Ailes in The Loudest Voice. Roger Ailes
Mm,
was the president of Fox News. So Russell Crowe was amazing.
I didn't
I
see that
learned like
movie.
that. It's not about I for topic of advancing my acting technique is I can watch examples, but I've made a mesh of my own methods that I learned. A little bit of Stella Adler, a little bit of Uta Hagen, a little bit of Stanislavski, a little bit, and the basis, of course, is Kristen Linklater method. But I made my own, and I think all actors should find their own niche of how they feel comfortable, where I suck up a memory that I apply to my role, or how I justify a scene and the energy, the status. David Mamet is very interesting in his work with actors about status and what if, not as if by Meisner, but the what if. What if I do this? What is my mission? And it's all a game of status. I like to apply all of that, and but watching new stuff is learning, really.
Have you ever thought of making your own movie as a producer or a director? Have you ever dreamed of that? And if yes, what would be the story about?
Um, it's hanging above my head for many years. A lot of people have told me I'm very mathematical, so I like numbers and organization. I'm very tip tap 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 tap. This needs to go like this, ping pong. So that's great for a line producer or producer. Yes, I think I would be good at that. Directing, I'm a little bit afraid because I have this dark control freak part over here. I am great with my colleagues and so on, but I think if I would be a director and I would try to over control everything, and that is a shot in the knee.
Because
you
you
don't
need
want that.
you need everything to be perfect. Does that sound?
Yeah. I'm very picky. I'm very picky. I think I need to be more mature to get into that. I think need more experience as an actor, meet more people, and really be more mature. Because I am 43, but I still think I'm a kid. I'm very silly sometimes, and I like it like that. My Peter Pan complex. Uh, but if it would be something, I don't know. Either it would be a biographical story of some kind of epocha or era that I would analyze and to the max and retell it in my view, or it would be a really hard social drama that you're at the edge of your seat the whole time because life has beautiful things, but life is also very hard for some people. I don't know. Gary Oldman's Nil by Mouth comes to mind when he directed the movie. That's a terrible social drama of low income, low class British family and so on. Very destructive. I think those. I want to see emotion from actors that are super realistic, and that really get the spectator, get the audience. Like I said, on the edge of their seats and breathing with them. I don't know if you remember from the 90s, Once We're Warriors, a New Zealand movie. Also very difficult social drama. So that's what I'm interested in, that, sharing that with the world of not only looking at big cars and pretty dresses and champagne for everyone,
Right.
please. You know?
Luca, if there was a movie about you, like about this kid who moved so many places, followed his father, and then ended up in LA, and then moved to Barcelona, what genre would that movie be? What do you think of yourself? Is your life more dramatic or comedian, or like what is it?
Um, First of all, it should be a cartoon, so I can voice it. Anyway. All right.
Okay,
I don't
even if it
know.
okay, it's cartoon,
Good,
then
good, interesting question. Thank you.
then who would you be there?
The mouse feeble. No, I don't know. A little bit of everything. Yeah, you know what it would be like? Uh, it would be kind of like Tim Burton's Big Fish with Albert Finney and Ewan McGregor, if you remember that movie. It's a
Huh,
great movie. It
very
would be kind
interesting
of like
choice.
that. That I had such crazy things happen in my life that I think people would not believe me that really happened, and that I'm full of excrement. So yeah, it would be kind of like Big Fish because I met so many people. I've done so many different things, and really, yes, I think people would not. He's just fisherman's tales. He's talk. That could never happen, and yes, it did happen. I think it would be kind of like something like that. Yeah.
Very interesting. So maybe there will be a book one day after which there will be a movie. Because you know that my interest in this program, I really ask people who got their success, who are working actors, and what was that choice that you made in your life that actually uh, moved you to that way or this way that made situation to be exactly how it is with you today. Do you remember anything in your life like really where you had to make a choice, and if you did differently, your life wouldn't be like that today?
Yes, of course. It's called relationships.
And marriage.
Marriage is already a complicated relationship.
All right.
Set in stone. Yeah, no, differently. Of course, yeah. There's so many. There's so many moments. I should have gone left. I should have gone left, not right. I mean, on just simple as that, you know.
So there's never.
Of course, but there's no regrets. If you think and if you feel that you have regrets in your life, you're not gonna go and you're gonna still remain in that point. You cannot have regrets. You can analyze the problem and say, okay, I effed up, whatever, but move on. Otherwise, you're not gonna move anywhere. So I don't regret anything. Even the hurtful things that I've done to people, intentional or unintentional, doesn't. I cannot have regrets. I can fix it for the now and the future. That's
All
it.
that made you who you are. Really,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think I I, I just want to have fun. Honestly, I'm sick and tired of dramas. I'm sick and tired of hardships. I want to be a better person, and I want to live healthy, more or less, and educate my kids like that. And working in this job is very difficult. Conceding jobs and getting jobs is very difficult. But when you do get them, it's very hard. Those are hard hours. Those are long days, and you don't want the production to suffer because of your non-preparation or something like that. I go headstrong into each project, and I'm committed 100% all the time. There's no lateness with me. I know my lines. I make it with the least amount of problems possible on my side, because it's so many people involved. That's all I'm looking for, and that's my advice to fellow actors. If
Yeah,
you
so
finally
there's
book a
no.
job, don't fuck it up by coming there in whatever state or I don't know, hungover, night off, whatever, not knowing your lines, or even getting chicken legs, getting cold feet. There's no time. You cannot have stage fright, as they say, the day you're working. You need to be there 100% and use every moment. Even if it's a small role, you need to do it well, because somebody was going to notice it. Somebody's going to remember that. My biggest compliment would be when somebody I work with that I respect and I had a really good time working with calls me back again for another project. For me, that's like, yes.
Yes.
You know what I
And
mean?
yes.
That they call me directly and they want to continue working with me because I'm a professional, you're a professional, whoever, we can function together in a group. Let's continue. That would be
Did you ever have
the best.
situations on set with the fight or with the director or your partner where you couldn't find, uh, a normal position for both? Did you ever have arguments on set? And how to deal with those? Yes.
I never had like a fight. I'm pretty quiet on set the first couple of days, getting in to know people, etc. What I also tell other actors, if you don't understand something, instruction or ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. Lost in translation happens to me all the time. I'm working in Spain for 7 years and I speak the language 5 years. So many times, and Spanish people don't speak English, not many, and if they do, not that very well. So I was lost in translation many times. Ask. What you don't understand, ask. Do I start from here? Do I start on action? Do you want me to go my mise en scène? Where do I move? Ask. It doesn't hurt. Ask before you. If we start shooting and then you do it wrong, you're going to look like an idiot. But you maybe, communication is vital on sets. So I didn't have any fights. I had discussions about the energy of some scenes where I implied why I would do it like that. And if somebody didn't want that, I was like, all right, if the director doesn't want it like that, I'll come back to what they want, I'll paint it over, and I'll do it in that way. So that was kind of the most extreme situation. Now, there were moments, I don't know if it's, when you're a Hollywood star, you kind of know when the last take is, so you're going to give your best. And so I was punched by Charlie Hunnam in Papillon really well, because he knew it was the last shot. So he went over the top, and then this over the top wanting to do an even better scene screwed up his rhythm, because every fight choreography, it's rhythm. 1, 2, 3, boom. 1, 2, 3, boom. And in the last one, 1, 2, 3, and I'm like, what? Huh? Boom. And he hurt me. he hurt me bad. I was in pain for 4 days. Of
Wow.
course, I kept my mouth shut because I'm 1 meter 92. That time I was 93 kilos. I'm a big guy. I cannot go whining, but it hurt. And also Army Hammer, the Lone Ranger, and Call Me by Your Name. He's taller than I am. Also a fight scene here in a pub in Barcelona for the movie Mine. And last take, and complicated fight choreography. 5 of us attacking him. He fights everybody off. He throws me over the shoulder and 5 times in my nose like this. And of course, in the last shot, he was giving it all and punched me really well in the nose.
Wow, but that's not professional.
I don't understand that.
Like
That's
people,
not professional. I agree
it's
with you.
illegal to do that. It's like
It's not
maybe
illegal,
there was
but-
something personal.
No, he's a great guy. He apologized, of course. But I think it's this wanting more. That's why I said before, is it the Hollywood actor? So if you get to that level, you need to add something more at the end? I don't know. I'm not at that level neither. Do I think I will be? I hope I will continue to work with this show that I'm on right now. I hope it's gonna get me more work later. But
That's very interesting.
I love this circus. You know what I mean? I love the circus of this job, and I love the camaraderie. Like we're really comrades there. We're friends. We're a family for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. You know, when you're shooting, you know everybody. You're intimate. I love that, and that gets my juices flowing, and it gives me energy to go. All right, it's hour 14. We're shooting still. Everybody's walking like a zombie, but let's do this. We're in it together. I love that.
Oh, such an awesome guest today. You told us everything that we have to be prepared that, you know, the professional is professional. Sometimes actors forget that they're in the movie to work and they start to play that actual, you know, moment of being in the movie, and that's all takes the energy, and it's not the real way to be good in the end for director and for your whole team. Luka, we have 5 minutes left, even 2 minutes, 3 minutes left.
Already?
Instagram
Why?
gives us 1 hour, but I need you back in
It's
a
already
few
1 hour?
weeks. In a
Yes,
few,
I will be back.
yes, you need to be back because today, guys, we didn't read your questions because we were busy talking, and in 2 weeks, I'm going to write down all the interesting questions and more that are going to come. And we're going to talk to what people wants to know and what they think of you and how they are
Yeah,
thankful.
sorry for that, guys.
For
Yes, I
those-
will be back, and you know, I'm here in Barcelona waiting for us to start the 5th season, hopefully in August. We don't know anything yet. Everything is such a gray zone, but I'm here, and I would love to join you again. I really enjoyed this chat, and I love to share. And I saw some questions, but in Russian Cyrillic, I don't. I read
Yes.
Serbian Cyrillic, but I don't read Russian Cyrillic yet. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, so that's why we're going to translate all them, and we're going to talk about them in a few
Okay.
weeks. Luka, thank you so much for sharing, and hopefully, well, there's 2 ways. I hope that everything is going to get back to normal really soon, but I also hope that you will always have time for us.
I will. I love my job, and I love people that are like this world. So thank you for all the fans, and thank you, Sophia, for this chat. And I will be back in whenever you call me. I
Yes.
have a lots of free time.
And say hi to your
Besos, how we
family.
say here. I will, and you to yours. Thank you very
Ciao.
much.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.